Back when motorcycles were raw and unforgiving, only real riders dared to twist the throttle. No traction control, no electronics, just muscle, metal, and madness. These machines didn't care about comfort or safety, they demanded respect. Today's bikes might be faster, but these beasts had soul. Here are 10 old beasts that modern riders couldn't handle. Number 10. Kawasaki H2 Mach IV, 1972 to 1975. They called it the Widowmaker, and for good reason. In 1972, Kawasaki unleashed a bike so savage it terrified even experienced riders. The H2 Mach IV wasn't about refinement or control, it was about raw, unfiltered speed. This 750 cubic centimeters, two-stroke, triple-cylinder beast cranked out around 74 horsepower, a number that doesn't sound huge today. But remember, this was the early 70s, and the H2 weighed just over 450 pounds. That meant one thing: explosive acceleration that could shred any competitor on the road. The rest of the bike simply couldn't keep up with the engine. The frame was spindly, the suspension was weak, and the brakes were laughably underpowered. Riders would blast down straights with their hair on fire, only to realize too late that the bike couldn't stop or corner properly. Even the way it delivered power was violent. Below 5,000 RPM, the bike felt tame, but once it hit the power band, the engine screamed like a banshee and launched forward like a rocket. Many riders described it as being shot out of a cannon, a thrill so intense that modern traction-controlled superbikes can't replicate it. The H2 Mach IV wasn't a bike you rode casually. It was a bike you survived. It punished hesitation, rewarded bravery, and demanded absolute respect. Today's riders, spoiled with ABS, stability control, and electronic rider aids, would struggle to even keep this monster upright. And that's exactly why the H2 Mach IV earns its title as one of the most dangerous, most uncontrollable old beasts that modern riders simply couldn't handle. Number 9. Suzuki TL1000R, 1998 to 2003. Some motorcycles are fast, some are dangerous. The Suzuki TL1000R, it was both. Suzuki built the TL1000R to go head-to-head with Ducati's 916 in World Superbike racing. On paper, it had all the right ingredients: a 996 cubic centimeters liquid-cooled V-twin, pumping out nearly 135 horsepower, wrapped in aggressive bodywork that screamed race machine. It looked like the perfect superbike, but under the surface, it had a dark side. The problem was Suzuki's radical rear suspension design. The result? Unpredictable, violent handling. Hit a bump mid-corner, and the rear end could buck like a wild horse. Riders described it as riding with a ticking time bomb strapped under the seat. The torque-heavy V-twin didn't make things easier. Crack open the throttle too hard, and the front wheel would launch skyward. Ease off suddenly, and the bike could snap back with vicious instability. Even professional racers struggled to tame it. And on the street, it earned a reputation for spitting riders off without warning. The TL1000R wasn't unrideable, it was just unforgiving. In the hands of a skilled pilot, it was blisteringly fast, with a soundtrack that rivaled anything on the road. But for average riders, it was a nightmare. Many TLs ended up wrecked, abandoned, or parted out because their owners simply couldn't control them. Today, it's a cult bike. Riders respect it for its brute force and flawed genius. But make no mistake, the TL1000R is one of those old-school beasts that would humble modern riders who rely too much on electronics to save them. This wasn't just a superbike, it was a V-twin monster with a death wish. Number 8. Honda CR500, 1984. If there was ever a dirt bike that struck fear into even seasoned riders, it was the Honda CR500, a machine so wild it earned nicknames like the Ping King and the Widowmaker. At its heart sat a 491 cubic centimeters liquid-cooled two-stroke single, producing a brutal 60-plus horsepower. On paper, that might not sound crazy compared to modern numbers, but here's the catch: all that power hit like a sledgehammer. Twist the throttle, and instead of smooth delivery, the CR500 dumped its fury in an instant, often lifting the front wheel sky-high before the rider even realized what happened. This bike wasn't built for casual trail riding. It was designed for motocross domination, and it showed. The lightweight frame, combined with that savage power band, made the CR500 a missile on dirt tracks and open fields, but it was also notorious for being nearly impossible to control at full throttle. Even professional racers admitted the bike demanded every ounce of focus, skill, and courage to keep it in line. Another thing that added to its legend: vibration. After an hour in the saddle, you didn't just feel tired, you felt like you'd gone a few rounds in the ring with Mike Tyson. Yet despite the punishment, people loved it. Because the CR500 offered something modern bikes rarely do: raw, unfiltered power with zero safety nets, no traction control, no launch assist, no electronic babysitters, just you, a Kickstarter, and a snarling beast that dared you to tame it. Today, the CR500 is a collector's dream. Not because it's refined or safe, but because it represents the last era of dirt bikes where fear and respect went hand in hand. For riders who think their modern 450 cubic centimeters motocross bike is a handful, try the CR500. Chances are, it'll try to throw you off before you even leave first gear. Number 7. Yamaha V-Max, 1985 to 2007. Some motorcycles make you feel fast. The Yamaha V-Max made you fear speed. When it launched in 1985, the V-Max wasn't built to corner, cruise, or comfort. It was built to dominate in a straight line. Powered by a 1,197 cubic centimeter V4 engine with Yamaha's V-Boost system, it unleashed 145 horsepower that came alive at 6,000 revolutions per minute. The moment that V-Boost kicked in, the bike transformed from a calm cruiser into a screaming missile. Riders described it like getting punched in the chest by a jet engine. The V-Max didn't just accelerate, it attacked the road. 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. Quarter mile in 10.8 in the mid-80s. Those were drag strip numbers. Even today, few modern cruisers can touch that. But make no mistake, this beast was no toy. The frame flexed, the brakes struggled, and the front wheel fought gravity every time you cracked the throttle. It wasn't forgiving. You either respected it, or you got humbled by it. What made the V-Max legendary wasn't just speed, it was the attitude. It looked like pure muscle on wheels. No fairings, no fluff, just raw metal and menace. It became an icon of rebellion, loved by power junkies and feared by anyone who underestimated it. Modern bikes have rider modes and traction control to keep you safe. The V-Max had none of that. It was a 600-pound muscle bike that demanded skill, strength, and nerve. It didn't care if you were ready, it just asked one question: can you handle it? That's why, even today, the original Yamaha V-Max remains one of the few machines that could still scare modern riders into backing off the throttle. Number 6. Laverda Jota 1000. 1976, back in the late 70s, when most bikes topped out around 110 miles per hour, the Laverda Jota 1000 came screaming out of Italy like it was built for war. This wasn't just another European exotic. It was the fastest production motorcycle in the world, hitting over 140 miles per hour when that was considered insane. The heart of the Jota was a 981 cubic centimeters triple-cylinder engine tuned by British importers Slater Brothers. They took Laverda's solid 3C platform and pushed it to the edge: high compression pistons, hotter cams, and a throaty exhaust that made it sound like an angry fighter jet. It produced around 90 horsepower, but it felt like more because every vibration went straight through your bones. The Jota wasn't refined. It was a raw metallic beast that demanded respect. The clutch was heavy, the throttle was stiff, and the gearbox felt like shifting a rifle bolt. At high speeds, it would blur your vision and test your grip strength. But if you could tame it, there was nothing else like it on the road. It was pure, violent mechanical honesty. Handling wasn't for the faint-hearted either. The Jota's frame was stiff but unforgiving, and the brakes, while advanced for the era, required strong hands and total focus. No electronics, no traction control, no mercy, just man, machine, and momentum. Even today, riders who've experienced one say the Jota makes modern superbikes feel soulless. It doesn't whisper or assist, it challenges you. It's the kind of motorcycle that separates riders from pretenders. The Laverda Jota wasn't built for comfort or convenience. It was built to scare you a little, thrill you a lot, and remind the world that true performance isn't about numbers. It's about nerve. Number 5. Suzuki RG500 Gamma, 1885 to 1887. If there was ever a street bike that felt like a race machine escaped from the paddock, it was the Suzuki RG500 Gamma. This wasn't built for comfort or beginners. It was built to terrify you in the best way possible. Born directly from Suzuki's GP-winning race bike, the RG500 was powered by a square 4 two-stroke engine. It made around 95 horsepower from just 498 cubic centimeters, which might sound mild today, until you remember the bike weighed barely 340 pounds. That gave it a power-to-weight ratio that could humble superbikes decades younger. Below 6,000 RPM, the Gamma felt docile, even tame. But once the power band hit, it exploded forward with a banshee wail that ripped through your helmet. It didn't build power, it detonated it. The front wheel clawed at the sky, the rear tire begged for mercy, and the rider had to hang on for dear life. Cornering was razor-sharp but demanded surgical precision. The RG500 had a lightweight aluminum frame and racing geometry that punished hesitation. Get it right and it danced like a GP bike. Get it wrong, and it bit back hard. It wasn't a bike that forgave. It was one that tested you. Brakes and suspension were top tier for their time, but there were no rider aids, no ABS, no traction control. It was just pure analog chaos. The RG500 wasn't about going fast, it was about surviving it. Even today, riders who've tamed an RG500 say nothing built since gives the same thrill. It was dangerous, beautiful, and completely unhinged. A two-stroke legend from an era when motorcycle manufacturers didn't just build machines, they built weapons. Number 4. Ducati 916. 1994. The Ducati 916 wasn't just a motorcycle, it was an event. When it hit the scene in 1994, it made everything else look outdated overnight. Even today, 3 decades later, it still turns heads and sends chills down the spine of anyone who knows what it truly is, a machine that looked like art, but behaved like a beast. Designed by the legendary Massimo Tamburini, the 916's beauty was only half the story. Beneath those sculpted lines and underseat exhausts was a 916 cubic centimeters L-twin Desmo engine, pumping out roughly 114 horsepower and a brutal wave of torque. On paper, it doesn't sound wild by today's standards, but twist the throttle and you'd discover the truth. It wasn't about speed, it was about intensity. The 916 demanded perfection. Its clutch was heavy, its riding position unforgiving, and the power delivery savage when the revs hit the sweet spot. You didn't ride a 916, you earned it. Every corner was a test of skill, every straight a chance to prove your bravery. It punished the lazy and rewarded the precise. But when you got it right, oh, it sang. The dry clutch rattled, the twin roared, and the chassis carved corners with laser precision. No electronics, no traction control, just you, a steel trellis frame, and a handful of Italian fury. The Ducati 916 wasn't built to make you comfortable, it was built to make you feel alive. And that's why even modern superbikes with double the power can't match its raw emotional connection. This wasn't a motorcycle for everyone, it was a motorcycle for the few who could handle the truth, that perfection sometimes hurts. Number 3. Kawasaki Z1 900, 1972 to 1976. Before the word superbike even existed, the Kawasaki Z1 900 defined it. When it landed in 1972, it didn't just raise the bar, it obliterated it. This was the motorcycle that made grown men question their courage and sent rival manufacturers back to the drawing board. Under its tank sat a 903 cubic centimeter DOHC inline-4 engine, the most powerful production bike of its time, putting out a thunderous 82 horsepower and a top speed that brushed 130 miles per hour. In the early 70s, that wasn't just fast, that was terrifying. Especially when you realize the Z1 came with no traction control, no fancy suspension, just raw muscle, a steel frame and your bravery keeping it upright. The throttle was instant, the torque relentless, and the chassis? Let's just say it demanded respect. Riders who treated it like a toy often found themselves airborne or sliding backward into the ditch, but those who learned its rhythm called it the king. It wasn't refined, it wasn't polite, it was wild, loud, and unapologetically powerful. The motorcycle that announced Japan's domination of the performance world. The Z1 wasn't just fast, it was reliable too. Many of these machines, half a century later, still roar to life with nothing but fresh fuel and a kick. The Kawasaki Z1 900 didn't care about comfort or control, it was a fistful of chaos and adrenaline on 2 wheels. Modern riders talk about superbikes with electronic aids and traction maps. The Z1 had one setting: hold on tight, because back then the road didn't forgive mistakes. And neither did the Z1. Number 2. Suzuki GSX-R1100, 1990 to 1998. If there was ever a motorcycle that defined danger, it was the Suzuki GSX-R1100, a beast so powerful, so brutally fast, that even experienced riders feared it. This wasn't a machine built for comfort or control. It was built to dominate and to punish anyone who couldn't keep up. When it hit the streets in the early 90s, the GSX-R1100 was the most powerful sport bike money could buy. Its 1,127cc inline-4 engine produced up to 145 horsepower, a figure that embarrassed its competition and terrified its riders. At a time when most bikes struggled to hit 140 miles per hour, the GSX-R1100 blasted past 170 miles per hour, with no traction control, no ABS, and no mercy. Suzuki called it a race bike for the road, but that was underselling it. The GSX-R1100 felt like a superbike engine crammed into a street chassis that was barely able to contain it. Twist the throttle too hard, and the front wheel would lift in any gear. It didn't just accelerate, it attacked. What made it legendary, though, wasn't just the power, it was the attitude. The bike was unapologetically raw. No electronics, no filters, just your skill, and a 500-pound missile that demanded respect. Riders who mastered it said it felt alive. Those who didn't often didn't stay upright long enough to talk about it. That's why the GSX-R1100 earned a reputation as a rider's bike. You couldn't fake it on one of these. You had to earn its trust, and even then, it could still bite. The engine was overbuilt. Forged pistons, thick connecting rods, and bulletproof internals meant these bikes could handle abuse that would grenade lesser machines. Even today, a well-maintained GSX-R1100 will smoke many modern sport bikes in a straight line. It doesn't have fancy electronics or ride modes, but it has something those bikes don't: pure mechanical violence. Most riders today wouldn't last 5 minutes on one. There's no safety net, no rain mode, no traction nanny to save you when your right hand makes a mistake. It's just you, the throttle, and a bike that demands total control. The Suzuki GSX-R1100 wasn't built to be easy, it was built to be legendary. It's the reason why riders from the 90s still talk about it with a mix of fear and respect. Because back then, this wasn't just a motorcycle, it was the alpha predator of the streets. Number 1. Honda CBR900RR Fireblade, 1992-1999. Before 1992, superbikes were fast, but they were also heavy, clumsy, and terrifying at full tilt. Then came Honda's CBR900RR Fireblade, and suddenly, the entire superbike world looked outdated overnight. This wasn't a machine built for bragging rights, it was built for domination. With an 893 cubic centimeters inline-4 producing around 124 horsepower, the numbers didn't sound earth-shattering. It weighed just 185 kilograms wet. That was lighter than most 600 cubic centimeters sport bikes of the era. A motorcycle that could eat corners alive while still hitting over 160 miles per hour on the straights. Modern riders used to traction control and ride modes would probably freeze if they tried to tame a 1990s Fireblade. It had no electronics, no safety nets, just raw feedback through the bars and a chassis so responsive it punished hesitation. One wrong input and you'd be airborne. But get it right, and it felt like flying with perfect balance. The Fireblade's total control philosophy was decades ahead of its time, and it didn't just win races, it defined them. Every rival manufacturer scrambled to catch up, but none matched the perfect balance of power, agility, and reliability that Honda achieved. Even today, the original Fireblade feels alive, raw, mechanical, and brutally fast. It's not for casual riders. It's for those who understand that mastery comes with risk, and that real superbikes don't ask for respect, they demand it.